Now, movies like Creed 3 and Top Gun and Black Panther Wakanda Forever and even Dahmer on Netflix, they all have one thing in common, and you probably know where I'm going with this, but today's video is going to be about, well, today's video is going to be about the Sony Venice and exactly how I got this thing, what my first impressions are, and what I actually plan on doing with this. We'll talk about it. Now, before everybody loses their mind in the comments, that's actually not my camera. I have it on loan for the next couple of weeks, and I'm gonna shoot a couple of different spec projects that I wanna add onto my portfolio because I haven't updated that in a little while, and having the opportunity to shoot that on the Venice was just icing on the cake. So I decided I was gonna use that in order to do those things. Now, what actually ended up happening is that I do have a couple of friends from my old retail job that are now working with some of the camera companies. And a couple of months ago, I made a joke about using the Sony Venice because one of my friends works with Sony, and somehow he hooked it up. So shout outs, Daniel. What I wanted to do with this camera is I wanted to use it not only as a way of seeing different image quality you can get out of a camera that you could shoot movies on, but I also wanted to challenge myself in terms of what comes with using something like a Sony Venice. It's obviously not a small camera. It's not the Sony FX3, it's not the Sony FX6, it's not even the Sony FX9 either. With that, it's gonna come with a lot of other things. Like, first of all, the camera is incredibly heavy. You're also gonna use a lot of memory. You're also gonna use a lot of battery life, and you have to prepare for those things. But what also happens from a production standpoint, at least intrinsically the way that I feel about it, is that if I'm going to be using a camera that's of that size, I want to make sure that I'm doing the other things properly. I want to make sure that I'm preparing how I'm actually going to shoot from a production standpoint, making sure I have my shot list, making sure my location's tight, making sure I have the proper crew for it, because you do need those things while using that type of system. So not only is this going to be kind of a cool thing I get to do for the next couple of weeks, but it's also an exercise in how I would do things if I was to work on a bigger scale. My entire career, I've only kind of worked by myself and other people that have kind of come in every now and again to help out. But realistically, I'm not necessarily a production company with employees and staff and stuff like that. So using something like the Sony Venice is going to be a little bit challenging because usually that's associated with making movies and crews with 10, 15, 40, 200 people. It's just going to be me and maybe 4 or 5 other people around the industry that are going to help out. So being able to use a camera that's more suited for real cinema or high-end commercials and be able to challenge myself to not only shoot on the camera, learn how to operate it, but also know how to conduct myself in those situations, that's what this whole thing is about. And this is just kind of my first impressions of this camera and just picking it up and getting used to it. Now, this is just a first impressions of using the camera. I actually only got it last night about like 9 or 10 o'clock, and right now it's only like, I don't know, it's like 9:30 right now. So I am going to be shooting with it pretty much every day for the next 3 weeks. However, when I'm operating on the camera, when I'm getting used to some of the menu settings, if you've used any Sony camera before, not only are you going to get used to this really quickly, but also I find it a little bit easier. The camera does have a double-sided kind of menu screen on it, so you could access some of the functions on either side. You still have the Cine AI that's going to be in there. There's a couple of differences that I'll talk about in another video, but you also have all of these systems that you have at the press of a button. And I find that to be really reassuring and really easy and comforting because I'm so used to the Sony FX6 system that using something like the Venice isn't necessarily a giant learning curve in terms of how the menus work or just how the camera operates in general. What I want to talk about is just the opportunities that have kind of been put on my lap or things that I've kind of gotten myself into in the last couple of months. Now, if you guys haven't really noticed, I post a lot on YouTube, and that's because I think that this platform is going to be where I'm going to be able to post my work and really take on being a DP and being a filmmaker and just using this as a distribution platform because it's free and there's no one to tell you otherwise. But you might be watching this and seeing this kid that you don't know or doesn't have crazy filmmaking work using the FX6 or using a Venice and thinking that it might not be deserving or anything like that. And the only thing I want to say is that I'm just lucky to have some of these things. If I didn't know one person that knew another person that was in line with so-and-so, I wouldn't have gotten that call or the okay to use something like the Venice in the first place. And that might just come down to working hard or just being lucky, but nonetheless, I'm not unaware that not everybody gets that experience. And I'm just gonna have fun with it and enjoy how it is while I actually get to do it. Now, what I'm also going to say is that using the Sony Venice, whether you bought it or you're borrowing it, doesn't make you a filmmaker. I think That term is so weird because it's so contentious around so many people. I think filmmaking just comes down to intentionality. If you make things with the intent that this is going to be a film and therefore I made it and I'm a filmmaker, I don't think anybody could really take that away from you. I find it's weird that we will advocate for free speech and the freedom of self-identity, but once someone on YouTube says they're a filmmaker, everybody gets up in arms and they race to try to disprove this person, which is a little bit weird in my opinion, because if me waking up, looking in the mirror and saying, I am a director of photography, I am a filmmaker, and doing things and steps in the way of making that so, for someone in a comment section or making a video or a Twitter thread trying to tell me otherwise, that might be the separation that I believe that. And a lot of the things that you might see that you admire now might have never happened if they had listened to some of those other people that honestly you don't even know. My thing that I've always kind of said in that topic was, even the third string kicker on the last place NFL team is still a professional athlete. You're allowed to not be good at that thing, but you're not allowed to necessarily take someone's self-identification away just because they don't meet your criteria. And a lot of time that argument falls apart when you kind of bring up some of the inconsistencies when people say things and versus what actually is out there. You don't have to be good at it today. You don't have to have these crazy, impactful, and compelling stories today in order to be called a filmmaker. You just have to have the intent and then actually do the things in your filmmaking journey in order for you to have that identification. And personally for me, I don't think anybody can take that away, and I don't think many people can actually define that for you. That's your journey and that's exactly what you want to do. So I don't know. I'm not going to be on the internet trying to tell you otherwise. That being said, I'm ready to have some fun with this thing. Like, this gigantic camera is actually going to be a lot of fun to shoot with. And if you've watched a lot of the stuff on the channel as well, I actually might be reshooting some of the test footage as commercials using this instead. So if you guys do want to see the behind the scenes of some of the shoots that we're going to be doing, or a lot more on this camera, leave a comment down below and also leave some questions that you might have. I have a couple of video ideas that I want to get through, but I want to see what you guys want to hear about the system and about some of the things that we're going to be doing. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.